Hello again. In this unit, we look at the needs assessment process, a part of the early steps in project planning and development, and in fact also an ongoing iterative process that measures change and progress over time. In this course, we're not going to take a comprehensive look at needs assessment, but rather just a relatively small chunk of it, as it applies to organizations and change and to your group projects. There's a much larger superset of concepts and methodologies that relate to needs assessment that we're not going to cover, so let's tease it out. Perhaps the best-known seminal work on needs assessment methods is Witkin and Altschuld's 1995 work, Planning and Conducting Needs Assessments, a Practical Guide. In it, they define a needs assessment as a systematic set of procedures undertaken for the purpose of setting priorities and making decisions about program or organizational improvement and allocation of resources. The priorities are based on identified needs. They also say that need, used as a noun, refers to the gap or discrepancy between a present state, what is, and a desired end state, future state, or condition, that is what should be. The need is neither the present nor the future state, it is the gap between them. Therefore, a need is not a thing in itself, but rather an inference drawn from examining a present state and comparing it with a vision of a future, or better state, or condition. In a sense, a need is like a problem or concern. They go on to say that need as a verb points to what is required or desired to fill the discrepancy. So the needs analysis can be viewed as a series of procedures for identifying and describing both present and desired states in a specific context, deriving statements of need and placing the needs in order of priority for later action. Witkin and Altschuld go on to say, the people in level 1 are those for whom the system ultimately exists. Those in level 2 either have some direct relationship to those in level 1, providing information, services, training, or nurture, or they perform planning, technical assistance, or oversight functions that affect others in level 2 as well as indirectly those in level 1. People in level 2, however, may also have unmet needs directly related to the functions they perform in relation either to their colleagues, such as managers, or groups in level 1. Therefore, although the prime target for needs analysis, the ones who will ultimately benefit, should be level 1, needs analysis can also be performed at level 2, principally for training needs, or at level 3 when the needs of the organization as an organization or the resources it provides are the focus of the assessment. So in thinking about your group project, you'll want to think about where you fit on this hierarchy. And if you're not at level 1, you still need to think about the level 1 beneficiaries and how ultimately your project 1 will address their unmet needs. Witkin and Altschuld introduce a three-phase approach to needs analysis that comprises the remainder of their 1995 book, and they go further into the methodology than I'll go in this lecture. But I've put a chapter from a second book of theirs, From Needs Assessment to Action, that goes into a little bit more detail. For your project, what we're looking for will consist of Phase 1, or the pre-assessment, what I used to call the preliminary needs analysis when I was doing consulting. That's where you define the information you're looking for. So you set up a management plan for the needs analysis and define its purpose. Then you identify what information you have and the data to collect, the sources you'll use, the methods you'll use, and the potential uses for the data. The outcome of the pre-assessment phase is your preliminary plan for the next 2 phases of the needs analysis, which you won't be able to do until the plan is approved, funded, and underway. That, of course, is the assessment phase, where you gather and analyze the data and the post-assessment phase, where you communicate your findings and act on the results. So it shouldn't be hard to see how needs analysis and outcome-based program evaluation tie in. The needs analysis is, in fact, your determination of the necessity for a change in a behavior, attitude, skill, knowledge, condition, or status. The needs analysis quantifies gaps and should help suggest key performance indicators that you can use to measure whether outcomes have been achieved. There are many methods to do needs analysis, and the UA Needs Analysis Handbook I've provided covers many of them, so I won't go into detail. Talking to your target audience directly is always good, but time-consuming and possibly expensive. You can also do indirect research. For example, there's published data on literacy rates that may be sufficient if you're doing a literacy program. And data can be quantitative, based on hard numbers, or qualitative, based on things that can't be easily measured using methods such as open-ended surveys, observation, and different types of ethnographic methods. These are discussed in the handbook, and you'll need to think as you read about them which might apply to your group project. Several experts suggest that at least for some kinds of projects and programs, the needs analysis needs to be ongoing and iterative. Certainly, as a project is underway, key performance indicators should be in place to measure progress, and so needs assessment is part of the overall assessment strategy. But when it comes to new projects, there's the pre-assessment phase that needs to be completed before the project proposal can even be considered. If there's no need, there's no project. Take grant applications, for example. If you expect to get funded, or if you expect your organization to approve a major project, you'll need to prepare a plan that demonstrates that you have appropriately identified a target audience and that you've identified a gap between the skills and knowledge audiences already have and those they want and need, and then have developed a sound logic model that provides a clear and convincing pathway linking your inputs, your planned activity or activities, and the needed change in the target population. So for your group projects, there will be a little bit of a fiction. Your group project should include a need assessments plan. That is, you should consider how you will assess the needs of your target population and relate it to the logic model and its outcomes. And it should be reasonably specific. For example, if your plan includes a survey instrument, you should build it. You'll not complete a full needs analysis because your group project is a plan, not an initiated project. But you'll identify the target population, plan for data collection, including the methods, and design, to the extent possible, a draft of the instrument. So that is, if you'll do a survey, and so you'll want to do some sample questions. Then you're going to have to assume, without having done the actual assessment, that your proposal will address the gap, because you won't have a real population to conduct the data gathering and analysis phase. If you are applying for a large grant, you need to do the preliminary needs analysis as a condition of submitting the proposal. Now, sometimes this can be an expensive phase, but in the real world, sometimes organizations will apply for funding for planning grants to fund the preliminary needs analysis if they can make a strong case for probable positive outcomes. But otherwise, most sponsors, that is, the people with the money, will expect to see the needs analysis with the gap clearly identified and backed by data in a grant application. Therefore, your project plans will need to specify your needs analysis pre-assessment phase, but then move ahead with your project plan, assuming a positive result. Your project plan isn't a grant application, but there are similarities conceptually. To create a viable project plan, you'd want to know whether you're addressing a need through identification of a gap. So for the sake of your project, we'll assume you are. I'll mention in passing one of the supplementary readings you may not get to that you should be able to relate to some of our Bowman and Deal topics. The notion of iterative and ongoing needs analysis is raised by Strube and McClellan in the context of libraries as a mechanism for creating what they call a culture of assessment necessary to prepare for organizational change. Drawing from research in business management and organizational psychology, the authors suggest that management needs and employee needs must be addressed as necessary antecedents to buy-in, which creates change readiness and in turn a culture of assessment. Stressing communication, transparency, and credibility, the role of suggestion systems and employee feedback, as well as steps for facilitating employee surveys, can be a catalyst for overall employee participation. There are other suggestions relating to suggestion systems and employee and management needs that are worth a read if you have the time or want to come back to this later. So that's probably enough for now. Needs assessment can be a really large topic, and when you get into the methods, it becomes complex. For our purposes, we can keep it fairly simple as long as you have a good grasp of the concept and understand its place in the project landscape. For your project, you should include the needs pre-assessment plan as part of the package, but I think you'll find it straightforward if you follow the template suggestions in the UA handbook I've provided. So ask if you have any questions, and I look forward to reading your plans and discussions.